When it comes to smartphones, Acer is far from a household name. It is known for its inexpensive electronics, however, and the Taiwanese company has managed to come up with an interesting device. Meet the entry-level Acer Liquid Z3. With $130 price tag, this device has definitely managed to catch our attention. The only real question though is whether it's going to catch yours. This is Chris with PhoneArena, and I'll help you find out.
The first thing that you're bound to notice with the Acer Liquid Z3 is just how compact the phone is. Keeping in mind the price point that Acer has gone for, we actually found the plasticky Z3 to be rather pleasing in terms of looks. A common concern we see raised when talking about entry-level smartphones has got to do with build quality. Well, on this count, we're happy to see that the company has got a very well put together piece of hardware on their hands. There are no visible cracks in the profile of the device, and it proved quite unwieldy even when applying great force on the sides. In other words, don't go ahead worrying that the Z3 may break down if you sit on it or something. Having said that, there is obviously no mistaking the Acer Liquid Z3 for a premium device, but it doesn't feel cheap either. The device feels great in the hand, mostly thanks to the rounded shape of the matte plastic on the back. Looking at the display, it's easy to see where Acer has cut corners in order to keep costs down. Thanks to the small 3.5-inch screen, the HVGA resolution of the TFT panel doesn't necessarily make it look horrible, though it really is edging on the sanitary minimum, even in this class. On the other hand, core reproduction appears mostly correct, and the viewing angles are pretty good as well. Unfortunately, the glass on the top of the screen is quite reflective, not to mention a real fingerprint magnet. The Acer Liquid Z3 runs an almost entirely stock Android 4.22 Jelly Bean experience. That's not to say that Acer hasn't done some extra work, however. For one, it's added a bunch of extra and mostly useful quick tiles in the quick settings menu. The 4 quick modes, however, are the most distinctive feature of the software. These act as a replacement of the Android launcher, turning the UI into something kind of reminiscent of the tiles found on Windows Phone. The first one of those is the basic mode, and it's, well, pretty basic as you can see. It holds a bunch of quick contacts and essentials like email and messaging, but really nothing more than that unless you go into the settings. The other fairly simple mode is the senior mode. It's slightly more advanced and includes quick access to a bunch of basic apps such as the weather, contacts, and FM radio. The keypad mode looks and functions a lot like the seniors mode, though you do get a persistent keypad on your screen. Last but not least, we have the classic mode, which offers significantly more functionality than the rest. It's the classic mode actually that reminds us the most of the Windows Phone tiles. The rest of Android feels and looks virtually untouched. The gallery, the phone book, the messaging and calendar apps, they're all identical to what you'll find on the stock Android. The Z3 does also come with the popular swipe keyboard pre-installed, though it does really feel cramped on a 3.5-inch display. Therefore, we had the urge to change to the stock Google keyboard almost immediately after powering on the device. Entry-level smartphones have long been riddled with poor performance. This has rendered them a little less than useless for anything but calls, texting and the occasional browsing. It would however appear that even cheap hardware is finally crossing the threshold for acceptable performance, for the dual-core Acer Liquid Z3 is handling itself just fine. Despite only having 512 MB of RAM, the Z3 actually managed to run a range of popular games just fine. Sure, those were rendered with as little fluff as possible, but that didn't take away from the gameplay in our experience. Moreover, even prolonged sessions didn't cause the phone to get hot. If you're planning on doing some gaming though, you should probably prepare to invest into a microSD card. That's because out of the 4 GB of storage, you only have about 2.4 gigs to play with. In terms of browsing, it does take a while for the device to load up pages, especially when it has to render a lot of visual content, though it generally performs well once it does. This means that swiping and zooming feels responsive enough to not detract too much from the experience. So, what's giving life to all of this? Well, it's a user-replaceable 1500 mAh battery. This one has proved to be more than sufficient to get us through a day of even heavy usage. Use the Z3 conservatively and the results may just surprise you. We've been talking a lot about camera phones lately on PhoneArena, but if the low price hasn't made this obvious enough, don't expect any miracles from the camera on the Z3. The unit features fixed focus and no flash, which has largely meant that every other snap would come out at least partially blurred out. Don't even bring up low light photography, it's simply out of the question. On the plus side, images have proper color reproduction and feel perfectly adequate for an occasional snap here and there. Shutter speed is pretty fast and the UI is a typical Android experience, which is pretty great by default. Overall though, and in all fairness, this is the second area where Acer has gone real cheap. This has unfortunately made the camera one of the weakest links of the phone.
When looking at the Acer Liquid Z3, you have to remember that this is an entry-level device at a very respectable price point for what it brings to the table. Though the low-resolution screen and generic camera unit could definitely use some work, the build quality, along with performance and battery life, are all great and even surprise us a bit. If you're looking for an entry-level smartphone on the cheap, then you should probably at least give the Liquid Z3 a consideration. Those of you on the lookout for a secondary or a work phone should probably consider the dual SIM version, which is priced identically. Acer has come up with a compelling device with the Liquid Z3, though it does remain to be seen whether the compact phone will retail outside of Europe. This was Chris with PhoneArena, thank you for tuning in.